All right. Welcome to the Becoming Man podcast, a podcast all about the art and science of becoming the people that we want to be. I'm your host, Daniel Rappe. Here on the podcast, we dive into the alchemy of becoming by exploring the diverse range of experiences and viewpoints shared by some of the most incredible performers and thought leaders. Today on the podcast, we have my good friend, Steve Cabe. Steve is an astounding magician, mentalist, and mental fitness advocate. In today's conversation, we discuss the value of difficult experiences, creating wonder through magic, and even the story of what led Steve to run a marathon in a straitjacket. Without further ado, let's get into it with my good friend, Steve Cabe.
Honestly, though, I think it's fine. I think there's a lot of podcasts out there that are very successful that they just have like a very basic setup.
Yeah.
And it's just because they talk about good things and good conversationalists and people enjoy the show. So
yeah,
it doesn't really matter so much. And then you've got the Chris Williamsons of the world who have like a crazy podcast studio in Austin.
That's the dream right there, is to have he takes it to another level though.
Yeah, he does. It's pretty impressive, I gotta say. It's like listening to that show. It's a good one. For the most part, I guess I only listen to the interviews with people that I actually know of.
Yeah.
So, probably half a dozen interviews with other people saying things that maybe I don't agree with, but such is life.
Well, one of the things that I think is so good about him is that he has such a diversity of people.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the fact that like he talks about himself as being like accused of being like red pill by the left and then as being a cuck by the right. And I'm just like, I like this juxtaposition because it just shows that he covers a diversity and he's not willing to just like kowtow to a very specific niche of people.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I like the fact that he is that well-rounded. So
yeah, totally. One of the things that I appreciate is that he doesn't seem to hide his taste in music, which happens to be like a lot of the same music that I listen to.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like prog metal.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, Sleep Token, bands like Under Oath, who he just interviewed, which was my favorite band from high school. Like sort of a deep cut and the like post-hardcore, post-metal, or I wouldn't say post-metal, I guess, but like, yeah, just the metalcore scene, so to speak.
Yeah.
But they've had a lot of bands just pass them by. Bands that they toured with 2-3 years ago are now selling out arenas and they're still playing the same small venues. They talked about this in the episode. And I was like, this is crazy. This is the crossover I never thought that I would get, because this is my favorite band from high school with this now world famous podcaster. Like, this band is not a wildly known band now, but they were in the, sort of emo prog metal scene, when I was coming through high school.
And so are you saying that they've like expanded their reach partially because of him talking about it?
I don't think so. I don't know how many listens that podcast episode's going to get, but I know amongst the people in the comments that I have seen that have listened to it, they're like, this is crazy. Like, with, this band maybe has less than 1 million monthly listens right now. In fact, I'll pull it up and just double check. Also, let me know when we actually start and I'll be more on top of my conversation.
Oh, no worries.
I'll try to project my voice more.
Fabulous. Actually started recording a little while ago.
I figured you did.
Yeah.
That's what all good podcasters do. I'll try not to whisper.
I don't know if you could tell I put the light on me, but that's because you're getting the good outside light.
That's all right. I figured that was probably the case. What was this? 1.4 million monthly listeners for Under Oath, according to Spotify.
Is that a lot?
I don't think so. I mean, that's 1.4 million people, as you put that into perspective per month. You could math is not my thing, but I think about Dodger Stadium all the time because it's close, seats about 50,000 people.
Yeah.
So fill that thing up, 20 times? That's, 1 million people.
It's 1.3995, whatever more than Neither of us is getting the attention.
Speak for yourself.
Okay, more than I'm getting the attention of. You do have a bigger audience than I do as of current, so.
I mean, audience size doesn't matter. Let's be honest.
Well, I just mean the fact that you've been on stages.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You have factually.
I didn't know we were comparing sizes.
Well, since we are.
Cut that. This is not going in the show.
It may make the show.
Don't put it in the show.
Oh,
It'll destroy the show.
No, it's good. I wouldn't worry about it.
All right.
A few days ago, I was reading this like MIT study that has measurably linked Chat GPT use with cognitive impairment. Have you heard about this?
I haven't.
Okay, like I'll read off what I wrote down about it. It's like users showed fewer widespread connections between different parts of their brains, less alpha connectivity, which is associated with creativity, and less theta connectivity, which is associated with working memory. In one example, participants in different countries used AI to help describe individual preferential regarding food, and the study revealed that they produced similar answers for participants in both the US and India, resulting in a cross-cultural homogeneity and averageness.
That's a mouthful.
No kidding.
Yeah. It doesn't really surprise me. I don't remember who said it. Maybe Simon Sinek. It's probably on one of those little short Instagram reels that I come across when I'm doom scrolling, which I need to do less of.
Don't we all?
But yeah, it was a little while ago. I saw a clip that came across, my profile, and something along the lines of when we skip the peaks and valleys of creativity. And I can say this for myself as well. When I skip the process and I'm just trying to get to the end result, like how do I just jump straight from nothing to output immediately? Yeah, I do feel like a less creative person. I feel sort of like a drone. Or have you seen that movie Surrogates with Bruce Willis?
No, I don't think I have.
It's an old one, and I have only seen it a couple of times, and then had nightmares about it when I was a kid. So, but I think about it as like it's like a fake life that you're living when you just try and go from nothing to output. And oftentimes, how many times do you hear it? Like, it's not about the result, it's about the journey
or the process. Yeah,
it's about the process, right? Which makes a lot of sense when you're actually in it, because you learn a lot of lessons in the peaks and valleys of life and the natural rhythms that each of us go through. But when you're just jumping to output all of the time, I think you end up missing a lot, and you don't exercise those intangible muscles that we all need to exercise, of creativity and courage and putting something out into the world that might fail, and then realizing that it did fail, and realizing your life's not over. Life moves on and you can try again.
Yeah. I mean, that totally makes sense. I think, obviously we want to get anywhere we can as quickly and easily as possible just by human nature. And now we're having to like actively choose the opposite of that for our own good, you know? Like putting ourselves through hard things, even though we have access to a theoretically easier way of doing it.
Yeah, it brings up a good question. Like, I run a lot. This is something that you and I have talked about in the past. And like, would I want to just go from nothing to being able to run a marathon with no effort, no hard work, no discipline needed in the training that I have to put in order to hit the goal that I have to run a marathon this fall? I don't know. I don't think it would be that rewarding, because it's kind of part of the fun part is that you run the marathon. It takes a lot of effort, especially if you have any sort of time goal that you're trying to hit that is challenging to you, which, like, I've got the Chicago Marathon coming up in October. I have what I would consider a relatively like tough time goal to hit for me, which would be 3 hours and 30 minutes. Like that, I don't know if I'll be able to hit it or not, but I know that if I do, I will feel immensely proud because it took a lot of hard work to get there. But if I just showed up in October, didn't do any training, and then ran a 3:30 marathon, I might be excited for a little bit, but I don't think I would be nearly as proud of myself as I would be for all the hard work and discipline that it takes amidst doing a lot of other things in life, making money, working a job, doing the things that I want to do with my life outside of running that would get me to that point.
Yeah.
It brings up the question of like, if something is not challenging or something's not difficult, do you really want it? Like, who was it that said this? It might have been Chris Williamson that said, just because something's hard doesn't mean it's worthwhile. The thing that makes it worthwhile is that it's fulfilling.
Yeah.
And we get to this point in our lives, and I think we're seeing it a lot right now. People saying, "Oh, well, this is a very difficult thing, which means it must be worth it." It's not necessarily the case. I have spent loads of time on difficult things that I then got to the end of and thought, "Oh, that wasn't as exciting as I hoped it would be, or as fulfilling as I wanted it to be." And I just made this incorrect assumption that because something was hard, it meant that it was going to be fulfilling. It's not necessarily the case. And then on the reverse side of that, it creates this idea that if something's easy to get, then it must not be worthwhile. How often do you see this in like relationships here in LA?
Yeah.
Where somebody is emotionally available and they put themselves out there and you have a good time, and then you think, oh, that was like, wasn't that hard. It wasn't that much of a challenge to get that person's attention or get that person to spend time with me. And now, like, should I be as excited as I am because it wasn't that hard? And it's like, I think people do that all the time. I talk with a lot of people here in LA about that. And it's just this backwards way of thinking. So,
yeah, I mean, that's the crazy thing. We naturally seem to want to feel like we've earned it, whatever it is. It's just like, I think on that same like flip side of it, and this is one that I personally struggle with, is like I guess because I grew up in endurance sports like running, and then I went and had this like paramilitary experience in college and at A&M. Like there was this like, it has to be hard. And so now there is this sense that I've had for many years now that everything worthwhile feels like it has to be overwhelmingly hard, like almost impossibly hard. And so I'm going through this process of trying to flip out of that and go like, oh, things can actually be easy and still be worthwhile. Like it doesn't have to be a painful process. You get what I'm saying?
Totally.
Do you have any experience with that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think there's probably a few things from my life that come to mind. The first thought is like, we live in Los Angeles. This is a world of storytelling and Hollywood and movies. How much of that follows the typical story arc of the hero's journey? If we just look at the story arcs that we pay a lot of attention to, a friend of mine, John Booker, works at the Joseph Campbell Foundation. We talk about this a lot. Is that like there's the hero's journey, then there's all of these other stories that we tell ourselves that you can trace back to mythology, historical texts, religious texts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a little bit of a tongue twister to try to say et cetera 3 times in a row. But if we're looking at the traditional hero's journey of like set up a character, development, conflict resolution, then I do think at times it's easy to look at our lives as, oh, what conflicts am I overcoming in progress towards the thing that I want? And if there's no obstacles to overcome, then maybe it's not a worthwhile hero's journey. How often do you hear people say like, oh, I wish I had a great story to tell? I hear this from people all the time. People will see me perform, hear me speak, and say, oh man, I wish I had great stories to tell. And I'm just a story driven person. Like if you spend any reasonable amount of time for me, you'll probably hear one of at least 10 predominant stories that I just carry along with me because they bring a smile to my face. They are things that I feel proud to have collected and my collective experience throughout my life. And that's just how I approach looking at life. It's like, oh yeah, there was this time when I was a taxi driver and I tried to take advantage of that opportunity by doing this. Oh, there was this time where I was a barista, actually how you and I met, which is crazy to think that through. And in that experience, I tried to take advantage of the opportunity that I had there. Oh, there was this time I almost quit magic, and then I read this book, and then I reached out to the author and said, name the time and the place anywhere in the world. And if I can have an hour with you, I'll meet you there. And sure enough, that happened. And that changed the stories that I was telling myself and thereby potentially the trajectory of my life. But I say all of that to say that I think there's a lot of people that look at their life and think, oh, I don't have any great stories to tell. And that's just because they're not getting specific enough and looking into the details of the challenges that they've overcome that are worthwhile. It's just they don't perceive them as that at the time.
Mm.
And then realize, oh yeah, there's this thing that I did that was difficult, or a time when I felt uncertain, and this is what happened. And maybe it wasn't even taking me to the result that I thought would be exciting or the valuable thing. Maybe it led me to a cataclysmic failure, but you still have a story to share from that. And there's still lessons to be drawn out of that, still wisdom to be pulled out of the experience that each of us have in our lives. But it's never going to be pulled out of our lives until we perceive it as valuable.
Mm.
But something is never going to be perceived as valuable if you're only looking at like a conflict or a challenge that you have to overcome for you to find value.
Mm.
So I think in response to your question, kind of wrapping around this whole like side tangent, which I have a tendency to do, is I think if you are only looking to the challenges in your life as the places where you can find wisdom, then you can at times fall out of like this ability to find that wisdom. I think it starts with realizing like, oh, there's a lot of wisdom to pull out of my collective experience. And then you can look to the challenges to try to inform where you should look. But if you're only looking to like the difficult things that you've been through, then I think you're just going to be addicted to trying to put yourself through difficult things.
It's a fair point. I think so many times, don't we just, at least a lot of us, just blow past areas where we've won something, or like because we always focus on the next thing, right? So we blow past the thing that we just did, even if that's an accomplishment unto itself, and then we sort of like write it off as like, oh, this is just a step on the way to the next thing. But we don't necessarily take the time to observe what it took to get to that thing in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Totally. It's going back to like David Goggins, despite how controversial he may be these days, has a really great thing in his book, which is the idea of the cookie jar. And that's just, okay, what are some of the things that have happened throughout my life that I'm proud of, that I can take a sense of personal pride in when I think back to, oh, the first marathon that I ran. Oh, the time when I was in that really tough situation in a work relationship or a romantic relationship, and this is how I handled it, and I'm particularly proud of it. Oh, this is a time when I did something difficult and had a result in which I felt like I did a good job. And you put all those things in this mental cookie bank, or in some cases, you actually write them all down. I've done this a handful of times. And then you can look back at those things when times get difficult and say, you just kind of give yourself a little treat, a little reward. You pull it out and you say, oh, yeah, there's this time I did this really difficult thing. And if I did this thing that was difficult then that must mean I'm still capable of doing difficult things now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think like there's all sorts of storytelling decks and things like that exist out there that I think are easy to look at as cringy or tools that we don't need to, mine the stories out of our lives, but they're very helpful devices. And yeah, I guess I'm getting a little lost from the question that you just asked, but like,
sorry.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, like we do all have stories to tell. It's just a matter of, how good each of us are at like mining those stories and, listing them out for ourselves so that we can return back to them.
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to a certain level of intention, because like you say, like, oh, you can have these tools. Mm-hmm. And I think I think this probably goes hand in hand with the fact that we have so much information overload, is that like I could easily hear about a tool like that of like, oh yeah, the mental cookie jar, and implement it for a day or two or whatever, and then just quickly get lost in the next tool that comes up and then forget about it.
Yeah.
I think that's the modern world just demands so much intentionality of us to say no to things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's very pertinent to like what we're talking about. It feels like a tangent, but you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, totally. Like the world that we live in is probably one of the most distracted worlds we've ever seen, if not the most distracted. I
Undoubtedly.
don't know what stat you could pull out from this, but sure you could do a little research and find like how many ads somebody's seeing per day, not just tangible ads, but like I think the study was done years ago. I think I don't want to slaughter it, but I know like a buddy of mine, researched a study several years ago, which was like, I think on average, the human sees like, it was well over 1,000 ads per day, like messages, like this is what you should think about this specific thing, billboards, newspaper clippings, social media videos, TV advertisements, radio advertisements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There it was. I said it 3 times in a row. I got it. I beat the tongue twister,
et cetera.
Yeah. But, yeah, like we're living, I think, in a very distracted world. It can be very easy to just distract your life away. And I do think that it does take great intention to just focus on a few things, say no to other things. I think it's honestly a much more fulfilling way to live because you're actually on track to a goal as opposed to just distracting yourself while the time passes.
So tell me, what was the first experience you ever had with magic?
The first one I remember is I was 6 and a family friend came over to the house for something. Like he maybe needed to pick up a book or something from my dad, some project they were working on. And I think I knew he did some sort of magic, but one way or another, he ended up showing me a magic trick, which was he had a dime and a penny in his hand. Now, keep in mind, you got to think of this story that I'm about to tell you from the perspective of a 6-year-old. Okay. You have very limited knowledge about how the world works. He had a dime and a penny in his hand, and he closed his hand, and then he opened it back up, and the dime was gone. And it was just the penny. That was it. Now, most people would say the dime was under the penny. But it wasn't. He picked up the penny and he showed it. The dime was completely gone. And it got me. And so then I asked him for what felt like an eternity to a 6-year-old, probably about 20 minutes. I was like, show me the trick. Do it again. Tell me how you do it. And eventually he showed me, and it was basically a slightly larger than usual penny that can hide a dime underneath it. It's like hollowed out. So you can do this, it's like a thing you can buy at any basic magic shop. And I did not know that at the time because I'd never been to a magic shop. I was 6. And he like gave it to me so that I could do it. And I thought it was so cool. So I would perform it for all my siblings and my parents and my grandparents. And I don't think they were fooled, but they patronized me enough to make me want to keep doing it. And that was the first experience that I can remember, at least, having with magic.
How did I know it was going to be 6 years old?
It's the impressionable time of our lives when we attach our identity to hobbies.
Yeah. Was that the moment that inspired you to pursue magic?
There's been lots of moments that have inspired me to pursue magic. I don't think when you're 6, you're like, this is what I'm going to pursue.
Sure. Yeah. No, understandable.
but yeah, I think my motivation has changed a lot throughout the course of my life since the first moment that I saw magic when I was 6. And to point out some of those motivations, I think, when I was 6, being the fact that I was the youngest in my family, I have 4 older siblings, it sometimes felt like a competition to get attention
Mm.
to me. I can remember thinking as a kid, uh, I was like, man, I don't have a talent, as if you only get one of them. And, and as if it's like the thing you attach your entire identity to, and as if it's rare and hard to find. And so I was like, what's my talent? What's my talent? I grew up in a very musical family. My brother's like a self-taught guitar prodigy. Taught himself completely how to play guitar from like a little chords book, like didn't go to lessons or anything like that. He just picked up a guitar and willed himself into a now songwriting machine. Um, and so him being closest in age to me, I was like, oh, like, what do I do? Like, I love baseball, but both me and my brother play baseball. So that can't be it because it's got to be my thing. And I did magic, and I've talked to my brother since. He recollects me telling him that I did not want him to do magic because it was my thing.
Mm.
So that was, I think, my motivation. When I was 6, it was like, oh, this is my thing. This is the thing that's going to get me some attention. Not to say that I was like deprived as a childhood. I have great parents, but um, that was when I was a kid. It's kind of the thing that I attached myself to, and would take little tricks to church and show them to my friends, and fail miserably at times. Um, but yeah, that was my early motivation. I think that when I got a little older, I would be super nervous to talk to my crush, at youth group. So dumb. And for whatever reason, I felt more comfortable like walking up to a girl, not saying a word, vomiting up, 30 playing cards. It's a magic trick, like, holding a bunch of playing cards. And then the funny part is I would then walk away because I didn't know what to say. So
You just vomit cards and then
yeah, I would walk away. I wouldn't like have a conversation or be like, so like, what are you up to? Like I had very, very low confidence in my conversational skills, something that's obviously changed throughout the course of my life. But at that time, just didn't have any ability to, will up the courage to talk to my crush. So instead, I just vomited playing cards. And yeah, so that was that. And then eventually, fast forward, I don't know, a decade, and I went away to college 14 hours from home because I was offered a baseball scholarship to play at a school that had a really good aviation program, which is the field of study that I wanted to get into when I first left high school. And didn't end up studying aviation just because it was going to be very expensive and I wasn't going to have the time to play baseball, which was paying me money because I was on scholarship. So moved out of that pretty quickly. But because I was 14 hours away from home, I didn't know anybody. I kind of incidentally just used magic to get to know people and break myself out of my, shell a little bit, force myself to talk to more people. It's kind of like a mask. And I think a lot of magicians could relate with this. So when you're performing, there's like a light switch that you turn on, which is like, look at me. I'm the performer. I'm in control. I'm the entertainer. I've got this. And it's like this hyper confidence that you end up having. And in some sense, have to have, because there's some people who are very standoffish with magic. You never know when you're going to run into one of those people. So I'm, at college, and it's like I've got this, you know, alternate personality or alter ego that, comes out, and I'm like the most social guy on campus. And then I stop performing and I'm not anymore. So that was an interesting experience. We can get more into that in a bit if you want to. But yeah, motivation changes over the course of my life. And, like I said, when I was 6, it got me attention. When I was, I don't know, probably 13, 14, it helped me. I don't know how much talk to girls, but it helped me like, interact with them in some case, even if it was just, vomiting up playing cards. And then I used it to meet people while I was in college. And then, eventually realized that magic can be a really cool vehicle to share wonder and joy with people and help people see things in a way that maybe they didn't see them before. And that's the motivation that I have for it today, as opposed to, anything that it gets me. It's more like the gift that I get to give other people.
Yeah. which highlights this. Like, what is it about creating a magical experience for others that drives you to do it again and again?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of research out there, if you know what to look for, about positive awe states, which
What's
is
that?
a positive awe state would be when someone is brought into an experience of wonder. Um, I would say, particularly when it comes to something that maybe they can't explain, and being able to like snap themselves out of whatever cynicism, or like just for a second, right? Like you see a really good magic trick. Hopefully, if you're the kind of person that's like has a smidge of open-mindedness, you're going to be a bit shocked for a second or two. And that is how I understand it, as a positive awe state. I don't want to misspeak here. I'd have to go refresh myself on the actual definition. There's a really great book out there called The Wonder Switch by a guy named Harris III that talks all about this. He's an award-winning magician. He's been doing magic his entire life and has a really, really cool story. But it's just this idea that you can bring yourself into a state of awe that then leaves a positive outcome on your life. And maybe it's just for a few seconds, but it snaps you out of the cynicism and the discouragement that I think a lot of us are very familiar with in today's day and age. So, yeah, it's like the thing that I love about creating these magical experiences for people, um, using creativity and magic tricks, is this ability to, like I said, help people see things in a way that maybe they didn't see them before.
Mm.
Um, and just try to remind people that there is a lot of wonder and a lot of joy to find in the world around them every single day.
Mm.
Like I just put together a new like performance reel, and it starts with typing letters out on the screen. It says the world doesn't need more magic. I really believe that. Like, and it's funny for a magician to say, but the world doesn't it doesn't need more magic, because the magic that we need, I think, already exists. The problem that we have is that we just can't see it.
Mm.
So, and I'm not talking about magic tricks. I'm talking about little moments of joy and wonder that can be found in each of our daily lives that we're just unaware of. That's the thing that really gets me going. Or I just say, like, look at the stories that you have to tell. Look at the wonder that you have to experience in your life. And we talked about this a little bit with, the experience you went through earlier this year. It's like, in that moment, obviously probably couldn't see it, but now here we are recording a podcast uh, in a different place than you were before, in a way that probably looks a lot different than it would have looked had the LA fires not taken place. And sure enough, like, there's a lot of joy in this moment, that I think both of us can find. So those are the little things. It's like you'll never see it, but if you just look for it a little bit more, you change a little bit of the ways that you're searching for joy and wonder, I think you'd be surprised by what you find. And magic's just the thing I got really good at as a 6-year-old that brings me to that point of, that's the vehicle through which I share those experiences. I like to think if I was an artist, I'd be painting pictures, but I wasn't. I just got good at card tricks.
And I've obviously seen you on stage a few times, and just seen the reaction and the joy that does come from the people in the audience, and just getting to see that wonder that you're talking about, even for a few seconds. And it's remarkable. I mean, I think, as you sometimes like even refer to, like you'll put magic in quotes, be like, magic, like silly, but like, because I think at a distance we can think of it that way, but like when you get up close and personal with it, there is, like, you see people become kids, right? Don't you?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, not everybody is like that. Like, there's some people that magic makes them feel dumb.
Hmm.
They feel like it's a puzzle that they have to figure out all the time. And I can't say that I coined this myself, but like I just mentioned Harris the Third's book, The Wonder Switch. Like, one of the things he says all the time is those people are stuck in trying to figure out how something works more than they're willing to allow themselves to focus on the wow aspect of it.
Hmm.
And if you jump to how too quick, then you crush wonder and your ability to dream big. Like, again, not my original saying. I just have to give credit
Sure.
to Harris on that one, who's just such a brilliant guy. But like that's like, yeah, really what it is like, how willing are you going to allow yourself, how willing are you going to be to allow yourself to experience wonder?
Mm.
And I think a lot of that starts with an open-mindedness and a curiosity. Um, Not so much about how things are or how things work, but about the experience and the joy that you get just by sitting in it. Like, I ride a roller coaster. I don't think, how does this thing stay on the tracks? Like, maybe I do when I'm at the top of the roller coaster because I don't want to die. And it's a natural, innate thing,
Yeah.
to be looking down at what feels like certain death because you're about to drop off of this crazy, height. But, when I'm flying around on, the Incredicoaster at Disneyland,
Mm.
I'm not really thinking like, oh man, I wonder like when the last time was they tested the friction of the wheels on the rails. How does this work? What's the approximate, speed you need to be going to? I don't honestly, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm just enjoying the thrill of this ride, and it's bringing me joy. And sure enough, my mom was in town earlier this year, and I took her to Disneyland, and we rode the Incredicoaster first, just because that's how it worked out. And we got off, and we both just were laughing uncontrollably. And I just looked at her and said, "You want to ride it again?" She goes, "Sure." My mom's in her 60s. We're riding the Incredicoaster 2 times in a row. Like, those are the moments, those are the things that I think it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna like try to think too much about um how this works, necessarily what this thing means, although that is important to me in my shows and in my performances. But I'm just going to enjoy this experience that I'm having because it brings me joy,
Mm.
and that can be enough for me.
And to that point, it's sort of like when you're in the moment thinking about the how, it doesn't change anything, right? I
No,
mean, like if you're at the top, if you're at the top of the highest drop of the Incredicoaster and you're mentally trying to spin on the how this works, it, it's not going to affect whether it works or it doesn't. So you might as well just be in it.
right. The only thing that it's going to affect is your perception of it.
Yeah.
And your ability to find joy in it. And that's what I try to remind people of with magic all the time. I used to have this coworker who would say, like, I hate magic. It makes me feel dumb. I always, I feel like it's something I need to figure out. I don't like the way that it makes me feel. And chances are that person had an experience with a magician or with a magic trick that a friend did on them that made them feel that way. And that's the feeling that they just assume that they're going to have anytime that they see magic. And so, in a way, they've already decided the experience that they're going to have going into a magic trick.
Mm.
And I would just try to kindly remind them, like, it doesn't have to be that way. It's magic does not innately make people feel dumb. The thing that makes people feel dumb is their perception of what them not understanding that magic trick means about them.
Mm.
And sadly, there are a number of magicians out there that use magic as like an ego thing. I don't particularly like hanging out with those people. Uh, I tend to be very tight knit with the magicians that I do surround myself with. And part of it is for that reason, because magic is not the thing that we should be using to make ourselves feel greater or better or more wise or powerful or cool than people. Magic should be like a gift that we get to give the world, kind of like an artist puts together a painting that maybe speaks to them, and then they put it out into the world, and by happenstance it happens to speak to other people, and people can share in that joy that the artist has and putting out whatever that specific work is. And so that's how I try to think of magic, as opposed to, like this ego trip thing that a lot of other people can tend to fall into. And I understand it, and that's a side tangent we can get into at some point if you want. But to your point, like, yeah, if somebody focuses too much on the how is this thing going to work, again, I just want to reiterate, it is not like a natural response to have to magic. It's been a story that they've told themselves that's coming from somewhere, as to like, well, I need to know how this thing works because I think of myself as a smart person. And if I don't understand how something works, then it must conflict with that view of myself that I'm a smart person.
Yeah.
And someone is unwilling to have that. So they just naturally crush, any opportunity that they have to experience wonder through magic, because they make the association of not knowing how something works is to be a indicator that they are not intelligent.
Which is probably it's likely that it's also a pattern or a learned behavior that they express in multiple areas of their lives, not just in relationship to magic. I mean, maybe they had a particularly bad experience with magic once,
Mm-hmm.
but likely, I mean, I could see how that would be reflected in multiple areas of life where, just that sort of like self-flagellation, even of, if I can't figure this out, then this is how I'm going to label this or perceive this in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, we are the sum of the stories we tell ourselves.
yeah. And oftentimes a lot of us don't tell ourselves very good stories, do we?
Nope.
I mean,
Myself included.
yeah, we've both had conversations about that in our own lives.
Yeah.
We've kind of touched on both sides of like when you were a kid as well as now. One of the things I was wondering, and because like I think this comes up in a lot of areas of life, is, do you think performing is more for the performer or is it more for the audience? And does it matter?
That's a really great question. Is performing more for the performer or the audience? It doesn't matter.
Which speaks to altruism to some degree.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what your definition of performing is. Like, if you're talking about stage performance, or, like scheduled official performance
In this context, yeah.
versus like, oh, I just do this thing. It's like, oh, magic trick. Like, um, it can be a bit of a gray area, I think. Like, uh, I am a bit humbled to admit, there's been times throughout my life where I think people have called me out as like, oh, are you performing that because like you actually think I would like it, or are you just hoping that I give you a good response because it makes you feel good? And that's an area I think it takes a lot of humility to really explore as a magician or as any kind of performance artist. Magic is unique in that without an audience, it somewhat ceases to exist. The art form of performing magic, that is, right? So, like, dance, if you're, somebody that dances on your own, like a hip hop dancer or something like that, you can turn music on and dance in a studio by yourself and it's still dance. You can paint a portrait in an isolated room and you're still painting a portrait. If I'm by myself in a room and I'm performing magic for a mirror, in some ways it's just card sleight of hand, or it's just clever engineering, or clever ways of doing things that looks cool in the mirror, but I also know what's happening. And because of that, it's mechanics. It's not necessarily magic. The thing that makes it magic, I wouldn't say is somebody being fooled necessarily. Some people would disagree with me on that. But it is somebody experiencing the like alternative reality that is created by the mechanics. So that's the difficulty of it, is because if you want to be a magician at a certain point, you have to perform for people. Otherwise, you're just a mechanic. um, so, yeah, is it more for the performer or more for the audience? Well, I mean, I think you could make the case that it's more for the performer from that regard, because you have to have an audience in order for it to exist. Um, the audience also has to have somebody performing for them to experience that reality. Um, and that's the case with anything. Like, if you're going to find wonder in dance, then unless you're doing it yourself, then you have to, experience it from somebody else. And unfortunately, magic as an art form is just one of those things that if you, I guess, like if you wanted to experience wonder from it and you picked up a magic book and said, oh, wow, like this is really cool. I'm learning the secrets and I didn't know this was a thing. Sure, you could experience wonder from that for a period of time. Um, but it's the law of diminishing returns with magic. You know, eventually you're just like, oh, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? So, and as far as does it matter, I know this is a long response, but as far as does it matter, um, yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. Um, yeah, I think in its truest form, it doesn't matter. I think in some cases, like, yeah, there are some people out there who are just so addicted to performing. I have a buddy named TJ. I don't know if he'll ever listen to this, but if he does, TJ, shout out. TJ years ago used to be so addicted to performing that he would perform anywhere, anytime for anyone. And it was kind of cool. He'll still do it when we hang out. I'll be like, TJ, show the cashier at Jimmy John's a magic trick. And he'll go, okay. And he'll do something like without a doubt. It's honestly one of the coolest uh, abilities that I have seen in somebody because of just how quickly he like turns on that light switch and performs. And he's so good. He's an amazing magician. But also, you know, the thing that I have seen in TJ that's been really cool is nowadays he doesn't have that as like a need. Like he doesn't walk around thinking like, oh, I have to perform for someone today. At least not that I'm aware of. TJ, let me know if I'm wrong. But you know, to whereas years ago it seemed like it was something that he just always had to be doing, always had to have a deck of cards in his hands. And so I think it's from that perspective of like, generally speaking, it doesn't matter unless you're in the category of, you know, performers that like feels like you have to do it in order to have some value or in order to like check the box of your identity. And in that case, then I think, yeah, it's a very selfish thing to do. Like if you're just performing for what you get out of it, or like the sort of thrill of like, ooh, like I amazed somebody today. Tell me how great I am. At that point, like, this might be like a little, little weird for me to say, but at that point, is it any different than masturbation? Like, let's be real. You're just doing it for like the feeling that you get out of it. Like, I think it's super selfish, and I don't think it actually serves people. And I think it probably leads to more negative views of magic over time because people will start to see that like you're doing it because you'll show a magic trick and then you like watch with eagle eyes what the person is like saying or doing, and if they don't have the exact right response, then maybe you're a little upset because you didn't get the, you know, self pleasure or fulfillment out of it that you had hoped you would get.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to some degree, like think of anything we could do as being both internally and externally validated in one form or another. That's why I say like, does it matter? Because I mean, like I've said before in the past, like there's no such thing as pure altruism in anything because you're getting something out of the thing that you're doing. And it's just like on a spectrum. It's like, how much do you feel like you're actually doing something genuinely for the other person or the other people versus how much are you doing it for yourself and what you're getting out of it? And like, is it wrong to I mean, isn't it better in some ways to recognize that you are getting something out of it so you have that sort of like self-awareness and are potentially able to keep it in check, or at least like, you know, actually do that, keep it in check and see if you're doing it, you feel like you're doing it for the right reasons. I mean, I don't know. I guess there's pure selfishness, which people will see at some point, right? And hopefully if you're sort of keeping the balance, then you're creating optimal experiences for everybody involved, including yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Define altruism for me.
Altruism is sort of like gosh, I wish I had a good definition, but like it's the whole idea is something you do for the sake of others. Like something altruistic is like, I'm going to go give food to people who are in need and not expect anything back and that kind of thing.
I see. I just Googled it here. The belief and or practice of disinterested and selfless concern for the well-being of others.
Yeah, selfless.
I see.
So selfless versus selfish. And obviously, like in these contexts, we're talking about like we do inherently have a selfishness, because when you do something for the good of others, you also in turn feel good that you did it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, it can be a slippery slope, right? Of like, if I didn't get anything out of magic, then I probably wouldn't be doing it. So I am aware of that. Like, I do like the way that it feels. I do like bringing wonder and joy to other people. That could also bring up the idea of like, I've said for years, I want people to leave my shows not just being amazed, but more importantly, thinking, wow, I never thought about it like that before. And does that just mean that I want more people to think like me?
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, to a certain degree, it also brings up this idea that like what worked for me will work for other people, and that's not necessarily true. I was just listening to a podcast the other day where one of the quotes that jumped out at me was like, "Yeah, what if you're having trouble?" They brought up the concept of cancer, like. Yeah, like if you have cancer, then we give you these chemo treatments and say like, okay, this is the process of getting better. Like it's what is the circumstance that you're in, and then what is the action that you need to take to get to the result that you want to be. So circumstance that you're in being cancer, action that you need to be taking is some sort of chemo or radiation treatment, and then outcome that you want to be cancer free. So you go from the circumstance to the action that you need to take, and then you don't get the result that you were hoping, then you're screwed.
Yeah.
So like if I'm saying, well, yeah, the antidote to depression or discouragement is, to experience more wonder in life, and you just have to look a little harder to find it. And somebody's super depressed and they try to change, their opinion, look a little harder to find wonder, and they can't find it. Then that person is going to think, man, I'm really messed up. Like I'm super depressed and there's no hope for me. So, it is a slippery slope in that regard of like, just saying, hey, this is what has worked for me, will work for you, is not always correct. I would say it's maybe only half correct sometimes, because we're all different people who have been informed by different experiences and different like life circumstances and different challenges. But I do think that there's something innately good about sharing your story, with the world, or sharing your art, or, as I say all the time, the world needs your light, which is I think the different joys and wonders that you experience, and just putting those out there, not as a recommendation for somebody, is like, you can get better from this. But, saying like, well, this has been my experience and this is something that has helped me, and serving that to people in a way that is caring for them, but recognizing that like, there's infinitely more about the world and in the world that I don't know than that which I do. And we're all, I think, on the journey to, if we want to, try our best. And that's the way that I want to live my life, is a life that's informed by trying my best and using the unique talents and gifts and abilities that I've built throughout the course of my life, one of which is magic, to try to make the world feel a little lighter and a little less discouraging and a little less cynical. And that's just my unique take on it. But I do see a lot of excitement or a lot of wonder coming from that take, from the standpoint of the research that's been done that we already talked about. So,
I mean, if everything worked for everybody, then to some degree we would have a bit of like just a monoculture. I mean, like we would be like, 1984, like we're all just marching down the street in the same way. But that's the thing. I mean, it's sort of like the fallacy of some self-help books is like, here's the solution. Here's the solution for like, this is the thing that's going to work. I'm just sort of like repeating what you're saying in different language, but it's like, no, like you said, it's the solution that worked for you. And I think that, but like sharing it's important still. And it really comes down to, it's like, we're all just trying to, take somebody else's technique for throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Do you recognize yourself as somebody who's always been contemplative? Or can you look back and see a point where that became the case, like a genesis point for it?
I want to say no, but I also don't know what the alternative is. So maybe I have been contemplative all my life. I think it's something that I probably became more aware of or developed more of in college. I went to two private schools. We could get into some probably arguments depending on what a person's background is listening to this, but I would say two private Christian schools. One was a Mennonite school, one was a Wesleyan school. Um, what I would consider, pretty big differences in terms of how they approached different things with students, how they approached teaching. But generally speaking, two places that really focused on informing students to this uh, idea of contemplation or like the practice of it. Some of my professors that I had in college liked to stir the pot a bit, being that, especially for my undergrad, we were in the Department of Communication and Theater, which theater being, a department uh, tends to be quite a bit more liberal than, like a Christian ministry major. And so you ended up in this very unique position, I think, at the school where I was at this private Christian school, but you're also connected with the theater department and you have a lot of opinions that might be a little bit controversial the uh, to the school in some way. Not to say that like we were starting a coup or anything like that, but I certainly felt, during that period of my life, like that was my last year of my undergraduate was the like right in the middle of the 2016 election. So that became a talking point of a lot of classes and talking about opposing viewpoints, trying to see things as they are as opposed to just how we think they are or how we want them to be, cognitive dissonance, like all of these things. And so I think that's really what started to inform a lot of is this actually how something is? Or is there another way of looking at it? I think to a degree up until that point, I just had a very narrow scope of how I thought the world worked. And, it's like, great, you graduate high school, you go to college and you get a good job and then you're happy. And how many people do we know each collectively these days that did that and are not happy? Yeah. So many. I know so many. Not to say that you can't find happiness in that, yeah. Right? But my point being, like, I think it's easy growing up until you have a little bit more life experience to think like there's a set path to happiness. And you realize that like happiness is not something that you attain. It's something that you choose, I think. Like there's, yes, a natural reaction to certain things where you can find joy or wonder or happiness or love. But I think that in most cases, a lot of those feelings are choices, or they start with choices of, I'm going to choose to find something to smile about today as opposed to only focusing on the aspects of my life that I don't like. Those are mental practices that, I've built up over the last couple of years that have been super helpful that I think caused me to be more contemplative because, yeah, sometimes life is hard. Sometimes I don't, love the fact that I've got all these responsibilities of things that I have to do because of X, Y, and Z, but I do them anyway because I know that, in some sense, if those things don't happen, then work doesn't get done, money doesn't get made, bills don't get paid. And, with that in mind, you have to demonstrate the discipline to do that. And sometimes it's not fun. But I think that there's like, time to wake up. That's right. I think there's like some joy to find that in that process, like I've mentioned before. I think you just have to look a little harder for it and that's what works for me. So I think those are the things that have caused me to be more contemplative. And that's just that helpful mental practice.
Does that sort of thing factor into your, as you call it, mental fitness advocacy? And like, is there some, I mean, if you're willing to share, is there any sort of like personal inciting incident that sort of led you on that journey?
Yeah, I feel the need to define mental fitness advocacy because it's such a unique slogan to have. Funny story, a couple of years ago, I was redoing my website and my branding, and wanted to have something in there about mental health because it's been very integral to my story and something that I do want to share in and at least open up space for conversation with other people, especially men these days. But I was printing new business cards and I listed it as like magician, mentalist, might have put storyteller in there, and then mental health advocate or something like that. Sure enough, I design this business card. I send it to the printer. I want 1,000 copies of these business cards, and I click send. And then I pop on my social media, and the first clip is a clip of, I think it was Simon Sinek, and it was, "This is why we need to stop calling it mental health advocacy, and we need to start calling it mental fitness." And it was this whole clip of him saying like mental health is inferring that it's something that's somewhat out of our control, and it's like either somebody's healthy or they're not. And mental health in a lot of ways is more like going to the gym because it's something that you can actively practice, and it doesn't get better unless you have the discipline to build some of these emotional systems of emotional regulation, um, deciding what you focus on, gratitude practices, and the list goes on. And I saw this whole clip and I immediately went back and canceled the order and changed it to mental fitness advocacy, because I think it's something that we can be really good at times in our lives, and something that we are not so great at times of our lives. And just defining yourself as like a somebody with good mental health or bad mental health feels more definitive, as opposed to just saying I need to work on my mental fitness today. Like, I'm going to choose what I focus on. I'm not going to let a difficult situation bother me. I'm going to spend some time visualizing maybe a difficult conversation that I've got to have at work today, and how I'm going to respond to that in real time. Not to say that it's not going to be hard, or that it's not going to be something that I've got to talk about a little bit later with a therapist or a trusted friend, but I'm going to demonstrate the practice that's needed, the mental reps to allow myself to be able to regulate myself in that moment. So that's what I mean by mental fitness advocacy. Hopefully that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So, remind me the question that you just asked.
Oh, that was part of it. But like, to the degree that you're willing to share, like, is there a personal like inciting incident that led you on this journey, or what does this journey look like for you in a way that you find to be like meaningful?
Yeah. And I think there were a few times growing up where I, for whatever reason, like I would find myself in a difficult place emotionally, and then I would think like, oh well, I just want to die. And in that moment, like, you're not actually thinking, at least for me, you're not actually thinking like, oh, I want to be dead. The thing that you're actually saying by saying I want to die is, oh, I would rather not exist than deal with this thing that I'm in right now. And so that feels like a solution to the anguish or depression or discouragement that I feel in this moment. For anyone who's listening that this resonates with, there's a really great book called Say Yes by Scott Erickson. It goes by the name Scott the Painter on Instagram. A lot of really great things in there, one of which is like, suicide is a it is an attempt to move yourself out of whatever position that you're in. And a lot of the times that comes to people, times in my experience when that's come to me, it has been out of a place of, oh, I feel stuck and I feel like there's no way out of this situation or this feeling that I am in. And I can remember probably the biggest like incident, inciting incident. Um, it wasn't limited to a single thing, but it was brought on by a couple of years back. I was in a relationship with somebody that I was over the moon to be in a relationship with, and that ended. And it was a little bit of a surprise to me. But then over time, things just got bad. Like it wasn't like immediately, my relationship ended and I was like, this is the worst. I want to die. But it was over time, the story specifically that I told myself from that moment being the inciting incident. I'm never going to find somebody like this again. Uh, I feel like love doesn't exist for me. This was my only shot. You know, these are the stories that lead me down this path of really getting into a place where I felt really, really stuck. And I remember thinking, I just don't see a future that I want to exist in. And the thing that changed for me eventually was like, I want to say it was like 297 straight days where I woke up either passively or actively thinking about ending my life. And sometimes like very literally, like, oh, what would I do? And like it's pretty dark to say. It's something that I can talk about pretty easily now, just because these are conversations that I've had with people. But I do recognize for people listening, this could be a very hard thing to hear. But again, something I just try to be more open about, because I don't think there's a ton of people having these transparent of conversations, if you will. So thanks for enlightening me for a moment here. But I think it was like 297 straight days, and eventually I got to this point of just recognizing like my circumstances might never change, and am I going to be content to allow my life to be dictated by my circumstances? And I think the thing that dawned on me was like, if I start to look at it as I don't see myself in a future that I just can't see a future that I want to exist in, then life feels super discouraging and depressing. And I feel like I'm always going to be sad and bummed that this relationship that I was in didn't work out. And, uh, just generally speaking, be depressed. But if I start to look at it from the standpoint of, I don't see a future that I want to exist in yet, then it opens the door for possibility and the door for hope. And sometimes you just need to wait out those feelings. Um, like emotions are fickle, the heart is deceitful, and sometimes you just need to persevere. You just need to continue taking the next step to give yourself the time. Not to say that time heals all wounds, but it does heal a lot of them. Um, to give yourself the time that's needed to recognize that life can change. Um, and so I started trying to put myself in positions that maybe were a bit uncomfortable, because my life being that it was something that I felt very stuck in, I said like, well, I'm going to try to feel less stuck today. And the way that I feel less stuck is by reminding myself that life can change. And so the end of that relationship was probably the inciting incident. I ended up some months later being in a position where I was running out of money very fast. And I'd recently gotten a therapist, and he said, you just need to get a job. So I got a job as a taxi driver here in LA, for a private cab service, um, and picked up random strangers all day throughout LA, and wasn't really thinking when I got that job that sometimes driving is a mindless thing, which means I'm just going to overthink all day, every day while I'm driving for 8 hours in LA traffic, picking up random strangers. And that gave me a lot of time to contemplate. And it was during that process of driving cars that it dawned on me that like something has to change, and my circumstances in a lot of ways are outside of my control. But if I focus on the things that I can control, which is how I choose to see a thing, then I think the way that I perceive my life can start to change. And that can be a really, really beautiful thing.
So it really comes down to like sort of, I don't want to phrase this poorly, but like opening up to possibility.
Yeah, I yes, recognizing that life can change, like especially here in America, like the United States. Um, we have a lot of choosing power, like, and there are what I mean by that is like I could choose to completely quit magic today and just move into something else. And it might be very difficult. It might mean I'm making way less money. It might mean, like it could mean a lot of things, but it's not like I'm stuck and I'm being forced to do this specific thing. And I think people tell themselves stories all the time of like I was just in Indianapolis for a friend's wedding and I met up with an old college buddy who is a dad. He's got 3 kids now and he has 2 mortgages and he's married. Um, he's got a lot riding on him. And he was telling me about how he's working this job. It's a corporate job, and he doesn't love it. But he does it. He does it well. But he kept telling me, he's like, well, man, I want to move into these other things, these other passions, these other hobbies that I have, but I can't because I can't quit my job. And I looked at him and I said, hey, man, I don't know if this is helpful or not, but I just want you to know, like, you could quit your job. It might not be a wise decision, but you could.
Hmm.
And it might mean moving into a smaller house, making some, more strict financial decisions, giving up some things, sacrificing, maybe stressing your family out more, not able to provide the life for your family that you want to give them. But just telling yourself all the time you can't is just going to make you feel like a slave to your job.
Hmm.
To whereas if you tell yourself, I would love to quit my job, but I'm choosing not to as a way of being able to provide the thing that I want for my family more than I want to quit my job. And I think that helps refocus the mind on what's actually important. So to me, if it's like, well, if what's actually important is paying my bills, then there's certain things that I'm going to do to ensure that I'm paying the bills that I need to pay in order to live the life that I want to live. But if the thing that's most important to me is doing a specific job, then I'm going to have to make certain sacrifices, most likely, to be able to do that specific job, which might mean living more within my means of whatever finances I can make because we live in a society here in America where, or here in the United States, I want to be clear. I don't know why I always say America. There's more than one America.
No.
Here in North America, specifically the United States continental, uh, um, you know, there are certain things that we do to live the lives that we want to live. So if you're content to be discouraged and depressed and live that life, then there's not a whole lot you need to do, especially in today's day and age when there's a lot of discouragement out there to find, to live that life. And I don't want to knock people that have like that need treatment or need medication. There's a lot of very real research out there that would point to that. So I don't want to just make it seem as simple as willing yourself out or choosing to not be depressed. Because as somebody who's been there, I know that there's times when it's like it doesn't even feel like a choice. It just feels like a state of being that you're in because of what's happened to you. But eventually you start to unwrite those stories. I think that through a lot of time and practice, and like for myself, I met with a therapist every week for like almost 3 years. It's a lot of conversations with a therapist to try to unwrite some of the stories that I was telling myself and some of the things that I just couldn't see at those times. So, yeah.
To your point, like there are people that need, clinical treatment, but there is power in that realization of that. I, what occurred to me when you were talking is that, like, I guess oftentimes we can get so just, very like blinders on, focused in a given direction and just looking at a given thing. So like your friend who's like, I can't quit my job. Can't quit my job. It's like, to your point, he can, but like you're just looking so focused in one direction, you can't see it.
Yeah.
And it's really just about like, I don't even know. Like, I mean, is there a way of, is there a technique to not see that? Because I feel like when you're in it, unless something comes into your field of vision that like pulls your vision to the left or the right or up or down, it, it's not very intuitive to just think to myself, oh, I should look in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, you're kind of getting down to the good old known unknown conversation that you could look up. But yeah, I think if you are unwilling to be open-minded, then yeah, you're going to be very locked into a specific way of thinking most of your life. And that's likely not going to change until you have some sort of inciting incident that allows you to see something in a different way. I remember actually prior to the breakup that I had, referred to earlier in this conversation, hearing about a friend of mine who was going through a breakup, and he would talk about it nonstop. And at times, me just thinking, like, it's not that big of a deal. Get over it. Life goes on. And then I went through that same thing. I was very locked into this trajectory because I remember one of my baseball coaches, and, when I was growing up, telling me, like, boys, one day you're going to break up with your girlfriend. Life gets really hard, but like, you still got to show up to work. You still got to take care of your responsibilities. You still got to pay your bills. So, be ready for that. And in a lot of ways, he's right. But that doesn't mean to be tone deaf and, insensitive to people who are going through that in the moment, for me to just say, get over it, which I'm glad I didn't say. I certainly thought at times. And then sure enough, like some months later, I ended up in a relationship. A while after that, I ended up going through the breakup or the end of that relationship. And then me realizing I had so much more empathy for that friend of mine who was going through this, end of his relationship, several months earlier. And I could not see that. Like, you could not have convinced me otherwise until I had been through that experience myself as the inciting incident, to recognize that, like, oh yeah, breakups can be very complex and they can be very hard. And they also don't have to be, because of those stories that we tell ourselves. But it's love is a complex thing and a complex emotion. And when that ends or something gets in the way of that, like a breakup, then it's a very hard thing to reconcile within oneself.
Yeah. I mean, it's, to some degree, it is about willingness to see in a different direction. But at the same time, like when you're going through the emotional experience of it, I mean, I don't know, willing, like, it's like, how much can you force your own emotional state in a different direction? Unless you, I mean, like, there's techniques that you can use here and there. Like, you can go on walks and runs, and like, you can do these things to affect your state. But as you know, and as I know from recent experience, like what my logic brain tells me to do and what my emotional, you know, center of gravity does, like, they don't necessarily line up.
Right.
So,
And I think that's the difficult part, is like, if we are only ever logical beings, then we miss out on a lot of deep loves and joys that we could experience. Khalil Gibran has a really great book called The Prophet. I'm probably going to misphrase the quote, but it's like, if you choose to not love in order that you're never heartbroken, then you'll never cry all your tears and laugh all your laughs. Something along those lines.
mm,
Um, really, really great book. And, um, you know, I think about that as like, yeah, if I'm only ever a logical being where I'm like, well, it's just the story that I'm telling myself today, and I never allow myself to feel, then I'm going to miss out on a lot in life. Likewise, if you're only ever guided by your emotions, then life is going to be more than a roller coaster. So it is a helpful balance. And I know that that's an easy thing to say. It's kind of become a bit of a cliche, like, oh, well, it's both and. Um, but what I think it is it's like being able to use your emotions to inform your decisions, but not completely dictate your decisions. Like, oh, wow, like I feel this way about this specific thing. Why do I feel that way? And then, in some sense, being able to, from a logical understanding, like, um, a journaling or like just like guided thought process of like, well, why am I experiencing these emotions? Like the emotion is the indicator, and then being able to try to dig underneath and ask yourself like, well, why do I feel this way when this person talks to me like this? It's not because they are a bad person, which is an easy thing to say. Like, oh, well, my boss at work said this thing, and I don't like that. It made me feel bad. Well, why did it make you feel bad?
Mm.
You know, so I think it's this, like, my emotions can inform how I'm feeling, and then based on how I'm feeling, I can try to ask myself, why am I feeling this way? And then that, like, the why can be the thing that I use to dictate what next step that I take. But again, that has to be used uh, with wisdom, because it can be easy, based on the stories that we tell ourselves, to jump to conclusions of, oh, well, you know, this person said this thing and it made me feel bad, so that makes them a bad person.
Mm.
When really they just happen to communicate in a way that triggers you because of some other experience you had.
Which also begs the question, it's like, did this thing make you feel bad, or did you elect to feel bad having had this experience?
Right. And yeah, I mean, that could start a very deep conversation about personal responsibility with one's feelings.
Mm.
Um, right. Like, I am not a therapist. uh, I don't have a formal education when it comes to mental health. I
Mm.
just have, my own experience and the experience of many others who I've had the blessing to hear their stories. Um, yeah, it is definitely a question of personal responsibility. I don't know if I have the answer
Oh, that's
to
fine.
that
Yeah.
today. So
How are you on time?
I'm fine. I probably have another maybe 10 minutes here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, looking. All right. So there's this one time you ran a marathon in a straitjacket.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
I like that response.
And what do you want to know about it? I did. That is correct.
Talk about it.
Yeah. All right.
The what, the why, the whatever you,
Yeah.
you think, you know.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, I, in 2017, was um, a year out of college. I was trying to figure out what to do with my career. I was working a job in food service, effectively. Wasn't super stoked about it. Was trying to perform more as a magician. I had purchased a straitjacket a few years earlier because I thought it'd be a cool thing to have in my show.
As one does.
Right. Yeah, it's like, oh, I could escape a straitjacket. People will think that's cool. No, they don't. Nobody gives a shit. Like, sorry, I hope it's okay.
No, you're fine.
That's
You're
okay.
fine.
Uh, like, whenever I perform that, I was always like, I'm going to try to beat Houdini's record of 2 minutes and 41 seconds, which is just some number made up in my head. I don't know what Houdini's record was. Houdini probably doesn't even have the record anymore. Like, it doesn't matter. But I was coming up with a contextual story to try to justify having this weird, outdated prop in my show that has been historically connected with magicians and sideshow performers since who knows when. So all of that was happening, of trying to figure out what to do with my career, feeling, lonely as a recent college graduate, trying to navigate, the dating app world at the time, trying to rewrite this straitjacket routine so it was like people would care more. And I went through an experience where I got ghosted like several times in a row. And I remember just thinking, like, this sucks. Like, man, like, people are just playing with me or toying with me or whatever. And I was like up super late one night, in my discouragement and depression. And I was listening to music, and a song came on. It was a song called Pieces by, I think it's Stephanie Great. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but song called Pieces. It's a worship song. The chorus of the song says, "You don't give your love in pieces. You don't hide your face just to tease us." And just, I don't know, it hit home for me. And in that moment, I sort of had a light bulb, creative light bulb go off. And I thought, what if I let people write on the straitjacket and Sharpie marker whatever obstacle that they feel like they're dealing with that they can't overcome? And then I put the straitjacket on, and then maybe even with this song playing in the background, I do this escape. And oh, maybe I like put in like an audio voiceover so it sounds like you hear my conscience while I'm on stage. And this could be like a kind of a cool way to break the fourth wall, to express like the things that I'm feeling and the things that I'm thinking. And I really wasn't sure how it was going to be received. I thought it was cool because it was true to my experience, but I didn't know how it would go over. And then sure enough, shortly after that idea came to mind, I was hired to go perform back at the college that I went to in Kansas, 14 hours away, where I used magic to meet people. And performed this routine where I give this talk about the looking glass self and self-fulfilling prophecies, which is basically like whatever society says of us, we then reflect as our own self-image. And then because we tell ourselves that's our self-image, it gets reinforced through the self-fulfilling prophecy. So I talked about that, and then I offered people the opportunity to write whatever challenge or difficulty they had on the straitjacket. And then I put it on and escaped. I did not realize when I invited people up to write on this straitjacket that like 150 college kids were going to come write on this. It was crazy. It delayed the end of the chapel service so much that professors wrote angry emails that kids were showing up late to their class. Not sorry. Like, so it was this really emotional moment, and I happened to record on my iPhone. I wasn't sure where to put my phone for that specific performance, so I actually just put it at the back of the stage and filmed the audience. And so I still have that clip. There's some kids that are like in the front that the performance ends, and they just sit there for another 5 minutes crying. And I don't know what experience was going on within them when that happened, but I know that that resonated really deeply with quite a few people there. So, being that I was trying to figure out what to do for my career, and I just written this piece that was like a super emotional, sort of, dare I say, transformative thing for some people, I was thinking through like, how do I do that more? And it wasn't something that I could just whip out at a corporate Christmas party. Like, all right, everybody, let's talk about trauma and challenges and hardships. I'm going to put this jacket on, and then I'm going to do this escape. By the way, there's going to be a worship song in the background. Just not really the time or place for it. So the whole idea of running a marathon in a straitjacket actually started more as a publicity stunt, if I'm being honest. I'm a bit humbled to say it because it has so much more meaning to me now. But at the time, I was like, well, what if I run a marathon in this straitjacket? People see all the writing on it and they ask, what's that? And I go, oh, actually, I do this performance. By the way, do you want to hire me to come perform for your college or your church or whatever it is, context or institution that this would make sense in to do this performance more? And so I kind of had the idea of running a marathon in a straitjacket in the summer of 2018. I was working at a sports camp in Missouri, place called Kanakuk, super cool place. And there's a lot of really cool, D1 athletes that end up working at that camp for the summer. And so I was chatting with some of them about it. And I'd run a couple of half marathons. So I was interested in running a marathon one day. And all of this kind of just happened because it was the things that I was experiencing at the time. And I'm glad that I was, much younger than I am now, because I think now, an idea like that would come to mind, and I'd be like, that's so stupid. People will judge you. Nobody's going to care. It doesn't matter. But I was just naive enough to think like, wow, this could like really change. Maybe like a lot of my friends. It could change the world. Like, who knows? And I wish, man, I wish I could go back to that place of naivety. And I think I'm starting to just care less, about the outcome of things and just do something because I love it. And that's kind of what that was. So sure enough, I signed up for a marathon in 2019, and again, it had gone through some just difficult like relational circumstances that kind of helped me take that final step of actually signing up for the marathon. I was like, okay, like I'm going to do it. And then over the course of time, as I trained, I filmed a bunch of footage on my iPhone, and, you know, didn't run in the jacket all that much prior to the actual race because I was afraid of what people would think of me. I was, didn't want to be judged by random strangers I probably was never going to see again. And it really took on a meaning of its own of like, we all run the race of life. We all will inevitably encounter different circumstances and challenges and barriers and hardships, but those things don't have to prevent us from taking the next step. And that's really what I mean. It's kind of become my brand, like, take the next step. I hope you take the next step today. I say it all the time to people. And what I mean by that is, I'm not saying like you should figure out all your problems today or you should find the solution to the challenges that you have. What I mean is that, like, I'm sure you have challenges in your life. I'm sure you have hardships, but there is probably one small action that each of us can take today, whether it's eating a little healthier, getting out in the sunshine, exercising, having a difficult conversation with, a colleague or a friend, or, taking the next step in a relationship. Talk to your crush. Don't vomit up playing cards. Like, that's a good next step for anyone who's listening here who also has that problem. There's so many things that we could look at as next steps. And so ran this marathon, the 2019 Indianapolis Monumental Marathon. Hired a friend of mine to fly out from Colorado to, shoot video footage for me so that we could eventually turn this into a documentary. And got right up to the finish line and attempted to perform the escape. Fun fact, it's a lot more difficult to escape a straitjacket after you've run 26 miles than just performing it on stage. Not having run 26 miles, much, much more difficult. And then, yeah, cross the finish line, drop the straitjacket on the ground as a symbol of, hope, eventually being able to overcome the obstacles. And the really cool part was that, all these people from a few different times that I'd performed this, routine of people riding on the straitjacket in colleges and churches, all this riding was on the straitjacket. And so there was a few times during the race where I was just feeling particularly defeated. And then I would look down and see the things that people had written, like divorce, miscarriage, skin color, alcoholism, suicide, the death of a family member, as like these real challenges that people are experiencing, and recognizing, like, man, like, all of that is way more difficult and way more significant than me running a marathon. So the very least I can do is like carry this along with me as a way of telling the story and finishing this race than just quitting and, giving up, which I certainly wanted to do because I'd never run a marathon. I don't think I ever ran more than like 18 miles in my training, which is still a lot, but like, nowadays the marathons that I run, I train differently, and I'd never taken any sort of goo or like nutrition in a race. And, I had my dad give me one of those at like mile 16. So then a couple miles later, I had, it's pretty crazy. I had, like a migraine from this like energy gel that I took that I had never had before. There's a common adage with runners, never do anything new on race day. I did so much new on race day.
Oh my God.
My first marathon, I'd only ever run 4 miles in this straight jacket prior to the marathon, which is 26.2 miles. A straight jacket has a crotch strap as well. A lot of people don't know that. So I was running with a strap between my legs the entire time. Um, I didn't know anything about the right shoes that I should wear. Like, what, I was running in these probably like 3-4-year-old pair of running shoes. That's just not good for what I need. I was also running with a partially torn meniscus, which I didn't tell anybody about because I didn't want anyone to try to convince me out of this idea. um, and then come mile 19, I'm like cramping super bad. I have a migraine because of this energy gel that I just took. Also, like, I'm tied up. I'm in a straitjacket. So like sweat is dripping down my face and the salt from the sweat is getting in my eyes and I can't rub my eyes. So I ended up seeing this lady at mile 19 that I saw at the beginning of the race and had a brief conversation with. And I said, "Hey, this is really awkward, but can you wipe the sweat out of my eyes?" And she goes, "Sure." So she puts her hands up to my eyes. And I did not realize at the time, because it's Indianapolis, it's cold. This race takes place in November. She was wearing wool gloves. So then she just wipes my eyes with wool uh, while I'm, yeah, while I'm trying to get the sweat out of my eyes, while I have a migraine and I'm cramping up super bad and the sun is in my face at mile 19 of a race. That was a particularly difficult moment. I, wanted to vomit. I didn't, thankfully. uh, I did walk a lot during that first marathon. But yeah, that's the story. And now there's a documentary that lives on YouTube that's self-produced. And, I think it tells a really cool story. It's a bit of a slow burn. Obviously I'd produce the documentary differently nowadays than I would then, but I do think it's a really cool story of like somebody who's just willing to, be just naive enough to do something crazy, film it all, put it up on YouTube. And, everybody that I know that has watched it has had nice things to say. But maybe those are just the people that are telling me about it later.
What's the
So,
title of it?
I don't know what the title is now. It used to be Courage Over Fear documentary. And then I think a year or two later, I was like, oh, maybe this would get more views if I retitled it. But I think now it's, if you just look up Steve Cabe Marathon Straitjacket on YouTube, you can probably find it.
So while you're listening, go put that into YouTube and watch his documentary.
Yeah. Or Straitjacket Marathon. I don't know.
Yeah.
But my name is usually a good way to like find it pretty quick.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's incredible how you tie so much of what you do to like real profound meaning. Like, so, I mean, like I didn't know the backstory of like what even came before the marathon, I guess. And like, even just hearing that, I was starting to like feel emotional hearing about these other people getting emotional. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But like even all the shows of yours I've been to, you're always finding a way of like linking the wonder, the magic, just all of these components to things that really dive into the nature of the human experience and what it means to be alive and to see magic in so many places. And I think that's just so incredible that you're able to do that in such a beautiful way.
Yeah.
So wanted to at least acknowledge that.
Thanks. Yeah. I think it's just one of those things that's innate these days. Yeah, I do really appreciate the compliment. I think sometimes, especially in conversations with others, there's a common sentiment that I think is shared amongst all of my friends of like, oh, you're going to get coffee with Steve. You're probably going to have some super deep conversations. He's going to go on a ton of side tangents and tell you a ton of stories. But that's just because it's, something I'm super passionate about. And like, what are we without our stories? Like stories have been around since the beginning of time and they're passed on from generation to generation. And, I guess I just want to live a life that is, full of meaning and live a life that I feel like is worth living at the end of it. And of course, there's that very famous research study of like the 5 regrets of the dying, which is referenced all the time. I don't know if you've heard about this, but yeah, somebody did, a study that basically was done amongst people who were terminally ill. And the top regret of all of those people was, I wished I'd lived a life that was true to me and not the expectations of others. And that's something that I think about all the time. It's like, man, like what is the thing that I really want to say? And then ideally, some of the best advice I ever got, how do I create something that I can say that thing without ever actually saying it? That I think is in a lot of ways what people could use more of these days, because that's art. And I don't think people need any more advice on how to live, which is just kind of funny because it's a lot of what we're talking about here in this podcast. But like, I think the world needs a lot more action takers and a lot more example setters rather than people who are just going to tell you like what meaning to make or how to live your life or what next piece of advice to take. And so, yeah, I do say all the time, I hope you take the next step today. But the moment that I stop taking next steps, I will stop saying that. And to a certain degree, it was kind of the same. Like I hosted a podcast for a little while. It was called Courage Over Fear. This is not a plug. But the reason that I say the title of the podcast and even bring it up is because, shortly after the end of the relationship that I went through and the inciting incident where I felt super discouraged, I did not feel like I was living a very keen life of courage. So I stopped doing the podcast, which was tough, but I just did not feel the integrity of continuing to do something that I wasn't actually doing. So yeah, it's, what is the thing you want to say? How can you do that without ever actually saying it? And just set an example for other people. I think goes a long way.
And that's like the cardinal rule of filmmaking. If you can show it versus telling it, then that's the way to go.
Yeah.
So in respecting your time, and we'll skip some of the stuff and maybe come back around to it next time. But
Sure.
I'm gonna throw out some hopefully quick ones.
Yeah, please.
Short answer kind of thing.
Okay.
Art, music, books. What's inspired you as of late?
As of late, I'm hesitant to give it away. No, there's a guy. He goes by the name of Anthony Poe online. I just listened to the interview that he did with Colin and Samir. Great episode. And he is a content creator who's got over a decade of experience in YouTube. The guy's 23 years old. And he was the guy behind some of my favorite like social media things, experiences that have been documented and posted, namely Cheese Ball Man in New York City. This is so random, right? So it's okay. Quick context. I know this is less of a short answer now, but this guy decided he would put on an orange baklava and wear an orange cape and stand on a box in Washington Square Park and eat an entire jar of cheese balls. And he posted a bunch of, posters around New York City that were not well designed and just said, come watch me eat this entire jar of cheese balls in Washington Square Park at, 10 a.m., whatever it was. And like 1,000 people show up and start chanting, eat those balls, eat those balls, like, and just different things. And like, it's so dumb, but also it brings people together, and it just reminds you of like the shared community and hope that can be experienced in the world if the right factors come into play. And there's a video of it on YouTube. It's one of my favorite videos right now. He was also the guy behind the Timothy Chalamet lookalike contest and the recent Instagram page that popped up called Kid with Crocs, where a guy went around the city and put Crocs on different famous statues around New York City. And that was a brand deal with Crocs, but nobody knew it at the time. And yeah, that's just super cool. One of the guys that I think is doing it, really, really well. People call him Dumb Internet Banksy, which I just think is amazing.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Other things that I've been inspired by lately, not a new story, but the story of Richard Ankrum, who got lost traveling up. What is the highway that runs outside of downtown? Is that the 110?
110, I think.
Yeah, he was on the 110 trying to get to I think it was I-5, and he got lost because there weren't many signs up. And he was a classically trained sign maker and an artist. And so he made, this is like in the early 2000s, I think, made his own highway exit sign, climbed up on a highway overpass in the middle of the day and put it up. And nobody knew for like 6 years. And then he eventually like posted this YouTube video about it. And the like California DOT was informed. And so they went up there to make sure that it was like safely put there. And then they just left it because it was so close to the original thing. But it was a way that he like, solved a problem on his own because he was fed up with this. And, he used art to solve that, which I think was super cool. So those are a couple, I don't know, I guess recent things that have inspired me. Books. I don't know. To be honest, I haven't been reading lately as much as I've wanted to. I mean, one of the books that I'll always go back to is Here Is Real Magic by Nate Staniforth, which is single-handedly the book that kept me from quitting magic in 2018. Yeah, I'm trying to think in terms of film. Just got into Dune. Like I hadn't watched that before. Just because I don't tend to follow all the hype around film. I tend to wait a while. So that's been cool to see. Probably not new to most of the people listening to this. And then as far as music goes, I just have weird musical taste. So I don't know if that really speaks to anybody, but things that are there's an artist, I'll say it here because who knows who's actually going to follow up on this. An artist by the name of Lorne. That's like it's like alien music, and I love it. It's probably not for most people. It's probably just for me. But yeah. Don't worry about time, by the way. I'm aware.
Specific instances or specific, I want to get granular with it.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you most often see everyday magic that typically gets overlooked?
I think it's in sharing eye contact and a smile with a stranger. Like, there's so many experiences that you can curate just by being present with somebody. So, like, in the grocery store, like especially like Trader Joe's, I don't know what it is about their application process or the type of the people that they hire, but like you can stop and like I'll say this all the time. I'll say, "Hey, how's your shift going?" And I think it just provides an awareness of like, "Hey, like I know you're working a shift here." And you probably don't want to be. Like, I don't say that. But say, hey, how's your shift going? You have a lot longer left. Has it been a busy day for you? And yeah, it's just small talk, but it, in some ways, I think goes to remind that person that like you see them as a human, who's somebody who's working a job, and you're aware of the context of their situation on a very, very basic level. When I was a barista or when I worked other, guest facing positions, there's times where people just interact with you that like they don't even see you. Like can't tell you how many times somebody would come up and order their, very specific latte drink, make zero eye contact with me, not talk to me at all. And then when I call their name for their drink, they don't even say thank you. They just pick it up and leave. And to me, it's like, what's the difference between me and a robot making this drink? I like to think that I was a decent barista, but like I wasn't so good that a robot couldn't imitate anything that I made. So yeah, I think just sharing in that humanness with people, taking 10 to 20 extra seconds to actually ask somebody how they're doing. Really cool experience of this was I went to In-N-Out several months ago, and super late at night. I think it was probably like midnight or closer to 1 a.m. And I go through the drive-through because I was getting back late from a concert or something and just wanted something quick to eat. So, we go to In-N-Out, and I pull up and I go to order from the guy who's standing out there, and I say, he goes, "Hey, how are you today?" Because it's just a classic thing to do when somebody rolls down their window. And I go, "I'm good, but what I want to know is how are you actually?" Like, and he's like, "Oh, I'm pretty good, man. Life is great. Wow, thanks for asking." And we had like a short little conversation. I could just tell like this kid who's working, he's probably like 18, 19 years old, working at this In-N-Out at 1 a.m. I'm sure would love to be on the road to doing a lot of different things with his life than working at a drive-through, is got this perspective of like wonder and joy. And I was like, man, wow. Like we talked for probably a minute because there was nobody behind me in line. And then we followed each other on Instagram. Right. Sure enough, like 2-3 months later, I go through the drive-through and not even thinking. And then all of a sudden, I pull up to the window and there's Caleb. And he goes, "Oh, wait, Steve, right?" And I go, "Yeah." Like, that's amazing. Like, what are you doing? What are you up to? And he's like, "Oh, I think I'm up for a promotion soon." And like, now I have investment in somebody's life that I met at a drive-through because I was willing to take a few extra seconds to say, "How are you actually?" Who knows what's going to come from this kid? I think this kid is probably going to do some really great things with his life, to be honest. He seems very determined and very optimistic. And those can be hard things to find these days. So I'm rooting for him. Caleb, if you ever listen to this, I'm rooting for you, man. I think it's, and those kind of things. So probably a longer answer than you bargained for. But man, stop. Talk to strangers. Make eye contact. Smile. Not everybody's out to get you. And if they are, well, screw them. Like, don't be rude, but not everybody's going to respond the same way. Whenever I go for a run these days, one of the recent things I've been doing is if I see a guy, I don't do it to women because I think it maybe comes across as creepy, but if I see a guy who's running by himself and he's running the opposite direction as me, sometimes I'll clap and I'll point at him and I'll give him a thumbs up, or I'll like go for a high five mid run with a random stranger and I'll be like, "Let's go." just, I don't know, it brings me joy, and I like to think that that joy is contagious, and you can hopefully motivate somebody else in the middle of their run. Or maybe I'm just annoying the hell out of people and I just don't know it, but it brings me joy, so I do it.
I was on a run with you recently and I got to experience that with you. And I mean, it stuck with me ever since. I mean, not to say that I've been doing it, but just the thought of it, I'm just like, man, that level of intentionality and that willingness to do that is so inspiring.
Yeah.
So
just participate in the world around you. That's it.
Final question for the day. We have more. We'll just have to come back if you're willing.
Sure, of course.
If there's one attribute you would like to develop within yourself, one act of becoming that you are yet to have, what would that be?
It's a really good question because there's a lot of them. So it's hard to narrow down to just one. But I think lately one of the ones that's been on my mind has been being, I don't know if this is the best wording for it, but being more original. Like for so much of my life, I, tried to hide certain interests or passions of mine because I thought they were unpopular or that people would think that I would, was weird. It wasn't until like a year or two ago when I found some friends who also enjoyed, just following the storylines of the WWE that I started telling people that I pay attention to the WWE just because I thought I'd be judged so hard for it. And even right now, as I say that, internally, I feel the need to explain, but that's just going to draw out this answer even more because I'm afraid somebody listening to this podcast is going to be like, you like that fake WWE stuff, in which case I would have a full response, but I will save that because again, that's just going to draw out this answer. So like, but just, I don't want, I have spent months recently just on my phone all the time. And I don't think that it is just being on my phone that is the thing that is getting in the way of me being original. I think it is also me not reading as much as I would like. Like I've got a crazy number of magic books that I have not read. you know, um, if I were to just like dive into the history of some of those, how much better of a magician would I be? How much more original could I be because I'm aware of these other things that people have done? So, yeah, if there's one thing that I could do as far as my goal of becoming, I think it would be, um, yeah, creating more things that feel original to me. I think the whole documentary about the Straight Jacket Marathon thing was an example of that, where it's just like, this is this thing that I want to do that's crazy. Like my dad told me I was stupid when I when I was going to do that, but I was like, yeah, I don't care because I'm going to do it, and I think I can, and I'll find the resources that I need to support this goal, and then I'm going to do it, and maybe I'll fail horribly, but that's an example of me taking the next step. So I was willing to do it. So the same thing goes for like, yeah, there's a show that I've been, I keep telling people I've been rewriting for 5 years. That's not true. I've been rewriting it probably for a few months over the course of 5 years and have been coming up with excuses as to why I'm not doing this show for whatever reason. Same thing with a lot of other areas in my life. So yeah, I would just like to be more original, to put my, passion for art out into the world as opposed to just consuming other people's stuff all the time.
Yeah, I think we would all be better off societally if we just were more willing to indulge our own proclivities for originality and not being, for lack of a better phrase, not being afraid of what that. So we do expect to see that show very soon then.
Yeah. Create more, consume less, do more, think less is kind of the way that I approach it.
Beautiful. Where can people find you?
People can find me. It's a great question. I mean, all over the place. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. I don't post like super regularly these days, so that's why I hesitate to say it. But search my name, you'll probably find me. It's not a super common name, but Steve Cabe. I think on Instagram it's Steve.Cabe, TikTok Steve Cabe, Facebook. Yeah, I'm around. If you're on the west side of LA, you'll probably see me running. Maybe that's where you can find me.
South Bay.
Somewhere where people are running in West LA. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Yeah.
This has been incredible.
Thanks for having me. This is fun. We'll do it again sometime.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed my interview with Steve, please share this episode with a friend and click that subscribe button below to support the podcast and hear more incredible stories of becoming. See y'all next time.